Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we bring you stories and you bring us views, listens, downloads. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And there's no Seth today, but we are just doing our recap episode of our pre-flood film crime noir sci-fi post-apocalyptic story. Basically is what it turned out to be, I think.
I think the best part of this story was just the whole notion that pre-flood, there was a really, the assumption being that we had a really happening civilization.
Right.
There's stuff,
right.
There's all kinds of interesting questions archaeologically, like the pyramids and stuff. All the structures around the world. And there's so many things that were obviously going on in ancient times. And, we've got this window of a few thousand years where we have actual recorded history. And this idea that you have a society that for one thing or another is breaking down, and it's like a post-organizational society, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this happens pre-flood. I just love the concept. I think we could have like a whole series of stories with this setting.
Yeah, it's probably close to my favorite Bible time. Right? Because it's so ready for speculation. It's so available just to speculate what could have happened, what they might have achieved, because you can basically say blank slate after the flood, so it's like, what were they able to achieve? And then I've read like parts of the book of Enoch and stuff like that. And then we look at like, what's his name? Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. It's like, what were they building? What were they making? Was it just a ziggurat? Is that all it was?
Yeah.
Was it a telescope? Was it a rocket? Was it an interdimensional portal? Like, who knows? And how I grew up was believing that we're smarter here in 2024 than they were,
Right.
That we are more advanced than they were.
Right. That
somehow our science and technology is more put together than theirs. Seth has a bunch of examples about how that's not the case. And it sucks that he's not here today. But, it would be really foolish of us to just assume that we are the ones who finally figured it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am in no way convinced that that's how it is. I think we came out of the Dark Ages, right, which is an incredible time of destruction of knowledge and information. And therefore, the Industrial Revolution, well, first the Renaissance and then the Industrial Revolution surely was a sort of great, I would say, rediscovering.
Yes.
But there are a lot of there's a lot of evidence to suggest that there's a lot of the scientific knowledge that we have was discovered already and either forgotten or turned into sort of folklore or myth or legend.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why I really love this whole idea of a pre-flood story, because we don't know what it was like. I've read stories about how it was, just tribes of people traveling around. And it's like, no, let's, how many thousands of years was it?
Yeah.
It was at least 900 years because Methuselah was 900 years old.
Right.
And it's like, look what America has been able to do in just 200 years. We're approaching 250 years here in 2 years, I think.
Right.
It's like, look at how far technology has moved in 250 years.
Right.
So do, 4 times that, basically, to start.
Yeah, I was thinking about my grandpa was in his 90s when, the moon landings and the Apollo space program, right? And he had, came to this country in 1896 and was in New York when everything that happened in New York was horse-drawn.
Right.
And that means manure.
Oh, yeah.
And every night they would come with teams of horses with graders and scrape all the manure into the East River.
Delicious.
Pollution. Oh, no, I didn't say that. Yeah, that was back when, we were one with nature and weren't polluting. It was one with nature, all right, ankle deep in doo-doo. But he was witness to the Wright brothers. He was witness to the change from everything horse-drawn to everything internal combustion engine. The radio, TV, as a fascinating period of time to be alive. And think of, Methuselah was 10 times as old as my grandpa,
Right. Right.
And that whole thing, the Bible accounts of these guys living, hundreds and hundreds of years, and the notion that there was this hyperbaric barrier in the atmosphere that literally, made life like idyllic, and then the flood was the bursting of those barriers. And the flood came from up and come from down, and all kinds of things like that are so interesting to figure out.
Right. Part of it being like, what if we, how old could we get if we lived in hyperbaric pressure to that amount?
Right. Like we're here, like our bodies are, they break down and fail to keep up with the genetically, our bodies are designed to repair themselves.
Yeah.
And after a period of time, that just starts breaking down.
Right.
And is there really a reason for it? Like, there's a lot of research been done, with people trying to figure out how to turn those genetic markers back on. And, it's not far-fetched. It's not some crazed science fiction thing, because the biological apparatus is there for, if not immortality, extremely long life.
Right.
Anyway, it's fascinating to me. As you were talking about, people talk about the Enlightenment, and yes, there have been technological advances, and we have, expansion of knowledge. But what about, read Psalms and the Proverbs? Are we really wiser now than we were then? It'd be interesting. It would be a really fun time travel story to go back to pre-flood and like hang out in the Nile Delta and see what was really going on.
Right. And talk to people and figure out what people were thinking, or what they were doing. You think about that, all of the terrible atrocities that the human race has committed.
Yeah.
Right. All of them were happening. And I was just about to say none of them were as terrible as what happened before the flood. But I guess I don't actually know that.
Right.
It could have just been a lot of really terrible things. But you'd think that God, if there's a God and if he's watching and if he cares, that this would have had to be really terrible, whatever great wickedness they were doing. And like, how insane is that he killed them for 1,000 years of or more of wickedness? But here we are running on, what is it, like 10,000 years, 5,000 years?
Yeah.
Of just horrible wickedness, but yet somehow it's still being sort of held at bay. You can get really introspective and a bit nihilistic and a bit fatalistic about like humanity and the humans' responsibility with stuff like that. But I just think it's a great story.
It is.
One of the things that I like so much about pre-flood, but then also sort of pre-Abraham,
right,
is the sort of wild, wild west approach.
Oh yeah. Like, Abraham finds out that, his nephew, I guess, Lot, he gets kidnapped. There's a scuffle, the kings of Sodom and whatnot, and there are these other kings. There's a scuffle. Like, the guys have gotten their boys together, and there's 5 armies against 4 armies, and there's been all kinds of stuff. And Abraham, gets his boys together and goes and just, wipes these guys out and gets back his nephew and his family and all their stuff, Right. And then there's this this character comes kind of out of nowhere. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, who is also high priest of God Most High, I think is the way it is translated. And he comes and he pays honor to Abraham Abraham, the man of God Most High. It's like he names him as this singled out individual.
Right.
And he brings bread and wine, they hang out. Abraham gives him 1/10 of all of his booty, and who is this guy? He's both king and priest. He's king of Salem, which they say, is Jerusalem.
Right.
And he's also the priest of God Most High. Like, that was as opposed to other gods, I suppose.
Yeah. This in part is part of it, is that like as a Christian, I have this set of information.
Right.
You know, and you read history, what we've been able to gather of, you know, non-Abrahamic history.
Yes.
Right. And there's still, it's terrifying because in order for a culture to be remembered, they had to learn how to talk. Then they had to learn how to write. Then they had to have the good enough sense not to write everything down on paper, but on like stone or clay, or preserve the paper, or make sure that the country was preserved so that the papyrus was not destroyed.
Right.
You know, or do like what a lot of the Israelites did, which do a lot of word of mouth. You know?
The old oral tradition thing.
Yeah, which is good, but also difficult because then you get things like how the creation story is actually two creation stories.
Right.
You know, one's a really technical creation story and one's a more artistic creation story. And so a lot of people will say, oh, it's clearly false or misleading or whatever. But really what was probably happening was Moses heard one person telling him a story over here.
Yeah.
And then another person telling him a much more artistic story over here. And he did the first act. Well, I don't know if it was the first, but some of the first acts of translation, which was one guy just kind of deciding how it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know, and just kind of writing it down, thinking desperately, I hope everybody after me doesn't get this screwed up.
You know? Right.
We have so many people to thank for that.
Amen.
But I wish that I hadn't almost had this flood idea because I really like this whole road warrior thing.
Yeah.
And I was really glad how it ended with the road warriors. Those were the mighty men that Ron was able to sort of gather around him, and they were like, because they were like these road warriors / construction workers, they were like destroying the road as they went, you know, that kind of thing. I liked a lot, but sometimes I come up with these really good ideas and then my other not so good ideas kind of fall to the background a little bit, you know?
Yep.
Like I can hear it sometimes when I give a good idea about a cool story element. Like, do you remember Grayson?
Grayson.
Yeah. See, the gray Maine Coon cat from a couple
Oh
stories
yeah,
ago.
he was really
so
cool.
But
we lost his place.
Yeah, he didn't. There was just no place for him.
Right.
You know, and if we were writing a novel, maybe he could have a place. But since we're just doing this kind of spitballing story idea thing, if they don't like burn brightly, then they don't burn at all.
Yeah,
sort of
they
thing.
fizzle. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But any other cool parts of this that you liked?
Well, I like the magic system. You know, we really didn't flesh it out. We didn't get to make use of it really as much as I wanted.
Yeah, no, same. I thought it was really. I like the whole like multiple tiers. You know, It wasn't just like everyone has this one thing. It's like a lot of people have this thing, but then some people have this extra thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like sometimes I like a magic system that has like a scientific basis to it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was the idea that these people, there was a biological basis for these different enhanced sensory capacities. I just thought that was kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
The private eye, we had an opportunity to, if we'd had time to get into like some detail about, some of the mysteries that were being tracked down. We had an opportunity there. This is a story with all kinds of opportunities that we kind of weren't able to really flesh out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean. I feel like this could have been sort of a trilogy, you know? So there was this book series. I don't remember who the name of the author was, but it was really interesting because it followed the line of Judah is the idea behind it.
Okay.
And it was like a book. There was like a story about Noah. Then there was a story about someone else, and then someone else, and then someone else. And it like and Rahab was there, and David was there. And it was basically the idea being is that each book is a novel about one of the lines of Jesus.
Right.
And they had like a little gold pendant thing that had like a lion on it.
Yes.
And so they'd like pass it on to at some point in time, the main character would get it passed on from their parents. And then, you'd read a book that represented hundreds of years later. And here was this pendant still. And I don't know if he ever went all the way to Jesus, but I imagine the idea being is that at some point there'd be a story about Jesus and then he would get this pendant, and the idea, it's like, it was kind of a cute, fun idea. I like that concept.
Have you ever read any Michener? Michener he wrote these epic novels like Texas. And it's like he follows a family, like from the earliest settlers through the Spanish period. Oh, wow. And it just goes right up through the Alamo, and then into the, and it's just this epic thing and kind of follows, one could say that the old epic, TV series Dallas, was like a spinoff of Michener's Texas. But anyway, and then he wrote one called Chesapeake, which was the same thing. The first starts out with one of the first settlers on the Chesapeake Bay, and then this whole going through all the Indian wars and then the French and Indian War, and of course the Revolution, and up through the Civil War, and all these things, and it just follows these father to son, these family lines, that carry on the traditions, and they hold the land. That was one thing. He also did one on Israel. Really, really interesting stuff. So if you get time, like who's got enough time? But this is Michener. He was writing, I think, mainly in like 70s, maybe.
Right.
But he had that kind of same thing that you're talking about, that kind of following a clan, and their traditions, and that they, and I like that idea. The Lion of Judah, it's actually like a gold pendant that, would be handed down from father to son, through the blessing, right? Because the whole notion that the blessing was, in Abraham's time, the tradition was that the eldest would get the double portion. First of all, the father's substance would be divided among the sons, but the eldest would get a double portion. Well, his favorite, of course, was Joseph, the son of his favorite wife, Rachel. And the way they got around, since Reuben was the eldest and he would have supposedly gotten the double portion, the way they got around that is that he, instead of blessing Joseph, he blessed his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So his favorite got the double blessing, but it was not, first in line. And then Reuben and Simeon were the next two in line, and followed by Levi. But Reuben and Simeon particularly fell out of favor. They had kind of disgraced the family in some way or other. And then Levi, the tribe, the followers of Levi, of course, they became the priestly class. That was Moses and Aaron were from the tribe of Levi. Right. And so the actual blessing was handed down to Judah. So that was the tribe of Judah, which became the preeminent, the house of David. And it's just an interesting thing how that all played out. Yeah. And even the word to a Jew, well, yeah, it almost technically mean, when they had the divided kingdom after Solomon, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, which was basically 10 tribes to 2. And then the Hebrew people, children of Israel, now they're called, the Israelis are it's called a Jewish state. Well, because the lineage passed down through the tribe of Judah. It's interesting to me. There's another whole aspect of story spin-offs of lost tribes that are, the different tribes and where they went, and did any of them stay together, and did any of them hold their lineage together? And,
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's the author's name is Gilbert Morris. He's like a Christian, and there's like 6 books in total, like Noah. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Sarai and Abram, Jacob. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It like kind of ends at Moses era though, which I don't know. These books were published in 2006, so there's probably no plan to continue the series as it is.
Yeah.
But it's a fun. I like that idea with the Jacob's ladder,
right,
and how that gets passed along, and that's actually what Jacob is sort of playing with while he's using the rock as his pillow,
right,
and then it like opens up this thing, and he sees it, right, but he doesn't tell anyone about the necklace. So what does he tell people? Well, yeah, I was laying in the wilderness using this as a pillow, and I looked over and look at this. There's this thing here. Because he's not going to tell anybody about the magical
right.
Necklace that lets him like travel far distances really quickly. Because I have the personal belief that the Bible is a collection of stories and truths.
Absolutely.
And written down by men who were given the wisdom of God, but and then translated by men. And so we have to be really careful about how we take it and how we take it to heart. But anyways, this isn't a Bible podcast. This is a storytelling podcast. Let me see. Anything else that I thought was cool? There's little things. There's stuff like how the fortune teller.
Oh, yeah.
How she'd like consume all the information, like plot maps and data sheets about who all was in the city, and then reveal the person's face to her. And it would allow her, what is it called? Time slipping?
The time sliders.
The time sliding ability to proc. And then she could basically like determine kind of like where someone isn't based on like what part of the knowledge she was consuming she felt fear about. It's like a way to sort of trick kind of self-preservation based ability to turn it into sort of a proactive people finding ability.
Yep.
Which I thought was really cool. Yeah, that's it. I don't think I'm going to be using this as the template for my next short story, but I think I will remember this one. I think I will revisit this one,
Yeah.
I don't know how sacrilegious I want to get, but it would be kind of fun to do a story like this, sort of what if story about lots of other Bible stories,
Oh, yeah.
Just
great
kind of
material.
Just kind of expand the universe open a little bit and ask what if and try and keep the canon as true as possible, but not, but just kind of ask the question, I think it's fun. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you like these episodes that we made, these Bible episodes, let us know by sending us email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or adding us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you didn't like these episodes, please let us know. We'd be happy to hear your complaints or your compliments or your criticisms, constructive or not. We will see you guys next week where we will start another story and it's going to be a great time. Bye, everybody.